Welcome into the Blurred Wire. Today we are discussing Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, with my wonderful co-host Ty, who is kind of doing like a Doctor Who face regeneration type of thing right now.
Yes, I have reverted back from being a man in his mid-20s to being a teenager once more.
Completely switched forms. I've been on a bit of a Doctor Who high, so I had to like get that in there.
Of
But
course.
yeah, how's it feel to kind of to be clean to join the clean shaven again?
If I did not have to do it for work reasons, I would not have done it. I
No.
grew a beard for a reason.
I guess the question is, do you think you're going to grow it back faster this time, or because I mean, you grew it pretty fast last time.
I hope so. I've heard that shaving it and then growing it back, it can come in softer
Hmm.
and a little bit fuller. So we'll see. I would love for it to come in softer because the mid-length period is where it gets real bristly, and that's the most
Oh,
uncomfortable because I have very sensitive skin. It's
yeah.
partly why I don't like shaving, is because it hurts to shave. But when
Oh,
it
okay.
grows out, it became really like soft and fun to play with.
And I mean, it's got to be. Otherwise, what's the point? Well, what's the point?
What's the point?
Um, so anyway, contrary to popular belief, I mean, contrary to what it might seem, we are not talking about beards today. We are talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga that just dropped in theaters this Memorial Day weekend. And I guess we'll talk more about box office in a little bit, but like it feels like it's not even the summer blockbuster movie. Like it doesn't feel like Memorial Day weekend because we don't have that blockbuster in theaters. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's just been so slow. Like the last movie to do well was Dune Part 2, and it was released back in March. And I'm almost like, imagine how well it would have done if they pushed it to Memorial Day weekend, because
Hmm.
that was like to like kick off the summer. Like it might have done insanely well. But again, we'll never know because it got pushed back because of the strikes and it was supposed to come out last year. But anyway,
Right.
going on to Mad Max Saga, which of course stars Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy. Anya Taylor-Joy is taking over the role of Furiosa from Charlize Theron, who played the role in the critically acclaimed Mad Max Fury Road. So I guess we'll start right there. How do you feel about Anya Taylor-Joy's performance in the movie, and how did she take on the role of Furiosa? Such an iconic, role, such an iconic action heroine role.
Stellar. I never doubted for one second that Anya Taylor-Joy wouldn't do a great job,
Hmm.
but this movie just it really represented what I think she's great at bringing to the table, and it's something that she has talked a lot about, like personally, about feminine rage, how often women are resorted to like suffering and silence or having resorting in movies to crying or being sad and not really representative of anger and an outward like violent expression of it. And I think Anya Taylor-Joy really tapped into that sentiment because she absolutely kills in this role, both people and the acting role.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like Anya Taylor-Joy was the perfect cast for it because she plays a lot of unorthodox roles, a lot of, not straightforward. Like in the world of Mad Max, that's so weird and so kind of crazy. She's the
Mhm.
perfect actress to portray Furiosa in that world. Same way why she'll be perfect as Aaliyah Atreides once we get Dune Messiah, hopefully if that's the direction that Denis Villeneuve continues to go in. But I think that's why she really helped bring it to life. And yeah, I didn't see any kind of drop off or anything. I felt like we were still getting to experience what it was like with Charlize Theron.
Mhm.
And I know you and I talked about it a little bit right after the movie. I think my only thing is I wasn't expecting her to be in like half the movie because,
Mhm.
and maybe it was a little bit more than that, but like obviously, massive spoiler alert, first of all. If you're watching any of these videos, they're probably going to have spoilers. Sometimes we try to do them spoiler free, but more than often they don't end up being. But just in case you got to this point and you still want to see it, and I definitely think you should,
Go see
massive
it.
spoilers coming out. Yes, go see it. And if that means you have to turn off this podcast right now so you can go watch it and then come back to it, that is perfectly fine. Stop listening to us. Go watch Furiosa because we are about to spoil it very, very hard. But I say all that to say, yeah, she was, I'm not gonna say barely in it, but she was only in it for like half of the movie. And like I was talking to you too, because I was like, I kind of like it because because like a lot of times when they do origin stories, especially like with Captain Marvel, or they put the actor, if they're doing origin stories back from like someone's birth, they'll put the main actor in like the first scene, the star of the movie, and then they'll kind of tell their origin story through flashbacks. And usually I hate that. I think it's dumb because I'm like, these flashbacks are stupid. It kind of like can take you out of the movie. I'd rather just see the linear timeline and show them growing up. That way I can see how they grew up will affect their actions as they get older, right? However, after watching this movie, I'm like, I almost kind of understand like the flashback, like the reason why people do it that way because we're halfway through the movie and I'm like, where's Anya Taylor-Joy? And like for the first half of the movie, it feels like Dementis's movie. Like we're watching Dementis, a Mad Max Saga, because again, Anya Taylor-Joy is a child and she doesn't talk very much. And we're kind of watching the story of how she ended up going from the green place of many mothers to Dementis's biker gang to end up being in the Citadel with a Morton Joe. So we kind of need all of that, but I see why people do it with the flashbacks because they could have started the movie with Anya Taylor Joy and like interpersed those scenes in between. But again, it probably would have been the same amount of screen time, but you wouldn't have walked away feeling like she was only in it for half of the movie. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it still was she still did an excellent performance. Like I said, the only thing I have to say is I kind of wish we got more.
Yeah, I think the time that she is in the movie is incredible and it's stellar. And I think it was a decision that it feels like George Miller was way more concerned with setting up the stakes for her, because there's not a lot of dialogue,
Hmm.
especially from Furiosa in this movie. And so, George Miller, especially with Fury Road, he took a very show don't tell uh, philosophy to the film, and it's something that I think he's really succeeded with both Fury Road and now Furiosa, a show don't tell, because we get to see a lot of emotion just through the choices that people are making in the beginning, like with the opening sequence with Alila Brown, her performance as
Hmm.
a young Furiosa, and her mother tracking Furiosa down for days to find these bandits. There's so much of what's told about the scarcity, how important their Greenland is, and how much she cares for Furiosa, all without dialogue. And I think scenes like that wouldn't work so much in a flashback. That would be way too jarring to have a present day Furiosa to then cut back to a before Furiosa. So it's a choice that he wanted to make, and I totally buy into Furiosa's revenge and her desire
Hmm.
for revenge by the end.
Yeah, especially because she had watched Dementis kill her mother in a horrific fashion. Um, so it does create a pretty powerful storyline. I love how Chris Hemsworth came back. Not came back. I love how Chris Hemsworth was cast as Dementis, because he's an Australian actor. And George Miller is an Australian director, and this is supposed to take place in Australia. So it really, really feels like the roots are being explored here. Same thing with I think the mother, whose name is it's escaping me right now. But the mother of Furiosa, she's also an Australian actress, and she was just in that, rom-com that came out at the end of last year, Anyone But You. And so I kind of like it. It feels like it brings a lot more authenticity. Um, and like I felt like Dementis's performance, Chris Hemsworth's performance as Dementis, I thought it was spot on. And I think the only thing I think from the trailers, it kind of looked like he was going to be like a little bit more demented, for lack of a better word. um, because I think like you didn't watch a whole lot of the trailers, which I kind of think will help with this movie because a lot of the trailers show you a lot of the action, a lot of Anya Taylor-Joy scenes, and a lot of Dementis's crazy scenes because
Mhm.
he's not like super crazy the entire movie. Like he has some like crazy like weird moments, um, but it's not like that's him throughout the entire film. So you kind of with the trailers you kind of end up expecting a little bit more. And again, I don't know if that's the way the trailer was designed to like kind of hook people in. I'm not really sure. Maybe that's just part of, watching a trailer, which can happen. Sometimes trailers can ruin a movie. Um, and I don't think it ruined it in this case. I think it just set expectations slightly different from when you actually got to the theater. Because it still is action packed, but I wouldn't call it the same like breakneck pace that Fury Road
Mhm.
was. Because Fury Road was like breakneck, like nonstop action was what it kind of felt like. And for
Right.
this movie, he had a story to tell. I think it's also partially with the prequel too. Like with Mad Max Fury Road, since he's telling a story that's kind of happens in the present, he can just skip right to the action and just let everything else kind of fill in as he's just like telling the story while everything's blowing up around you. But with
Mhm.
Furiosa, he has to establish, okay, what is the green place? How did she get here? Why does she want to kill Dementis? How did she end up in the Citadel? How did she end up in the period and as an imperator? I can't even say the word. I'm totally
Praetor.
messing up. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Anyway, how did she end up as that? There's a lot of questions that you kind of got to answer, which is why it kind of has to take a more narrative format rather than a more action-packed format.
Absolutely. But I think if you think of it that way, I think he really packs a lot in for as much time as he has to
Hmm.
fill the runtime, which what was it, like 2.5 hours. Honestly, it didn't even feel like 2.5 when I was watching it. It felt like it moved much quicker than
Oh
than
yeah.
that. But he covers a lot of ground in it, and he covers it really well.
Hmm.
I think with his storytelling technique that and definitely it doesn't feel like there's no action in the film because there is absolutely tons of action. It just doesn't feel like you mentioned as yeah, the pace is a little slower at times, but I think with that slower pace, you get more intimate moments even if they're brief. Like
Hmm.
very very nice like the scene with Furiosa and Praetorian Jack where they just have it's a very quick scene but they just have a moment where it feels like since she was a little girl it's like the first person she has found that she can actually bond and connect with.
And is not
Uh,
bad crap crazy.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then even little things like little looks here and there from her. Another testament to Anya Taylor-Joy as an actress. Like she spends a lot of the movie with the lower half of her face covered up, and she has such expressive eyes that she does so much acting with in this film
Hmm.
that she doesn't even need half of her face because she can communicate so much just through her eyes, whether it's taking in information, whether it's aggression, whether it's this fiery passion, she's communicating or this like intense like burning hatred or rage. She communicates all of it with her eyes and it's just a absolutely stunning performance.
I agree. And I think it was it was very interesting some of the other actor choices that he used cuz like we got Angus Simpson returned as the organic mechanic from
Hmm.
Fury Road and we saw how he was originally with the biker gang and ended up in the Citadel. But
Hmm.
then with and I think Nathan Jones, I think he played I don't know if he played him in Mad Max Fury Road. Yeah,
as
no, he
as
did.
Rictus.
Hmm. So he played Rictus
Hmm.
And of course, in Mad Max Fury Road, he ends up dying. But this is set before then, so he comes back as Rictus, which kind of sets a lot of
I,
continuity.
I believe he did. Yeah, he did
Yeah,
play him in Fury Road.
yeah, he did. But then Josh Hellman came back, but as Scrotus
Hmm.
instead of Slit, which I think Josh Hellman is just such a good actor. George Miller wanted to have him in the movie, but like the whole movie, I was like, why does Slit look so different? Or like I was confused because I thought it was the same character. Because again, like you can kind of do it and like it won't really notice. Like in the MCU, Gemma Khan plays Minerva in Captain Marvel, but then she comes back and plays Cersei um in Eternals.
Hmm.
Um, but like it's one of those things where you don't really know unless you like look at the casting and see that Gemma Khan is playing two different roles, even though it's like technically in the same universe. Because as Minerva, she has all this makeup on, she's blue, like you just can't really tell. It just looks very different. But like Josh
Hmm.
Hellman has a very distinctive face and a distinctive smile. So I was like, the whole time I was like, is he Scrot? Like I didn't know that he was Scrotus. I thought he was a war boy in the other movie. So that was
Hmm.
and then of course now I'm looking at the cast and I'm like, oh, so he was just playing two different characters in it. But again, he has such a
Hmm.
distinctive face. Like as much as I know George Miller probably wanted to bring him back, and he probably wasn't thinking about that. I don't know if I would have made him Slit or Scrotus or something like that. I don't really know what I would have done because again, he's a fantastic actor. I understand wanting to have him in the movie, but he does look like again that smile is like it's hard to separate it in a different vein. But yeah, he did look a little different, but again,
Hmm.
it's the face. You can't get away from that.
So how
So
did you
what
feel about? Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, you had a better question than I did.
I was gonna say how did you feel about having a Morton Joe back as a like secondary antagonist in this movie?
It was kind of interesting and it kind of made the film a little pretty layered. I think I'm almost like seeing Dementus's rise to power was important too, so we kind of understood that. But at the same time, I don't know, it's hard to explain because like I feel like a part of the movie again, because this was a narrative driven movie, it wasn't an action driven movie. But
Hmm.
as we got through the movie, basically Dementus tries to attack the Citadel. He gets turned away and pretty much destroyed. So then he goes and takes over Gastown, which is with a really smart Trojan horse kind of strategy too. I got to give him props for that. That was clever. To take over Gastown. But then he ends up like he gets in a conflict with these other citadels, and then he ends up going into a 40 days war with Amort and Joe. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I almost I don't know. I feel like and like that part they kind of show like in montage. And I'm like, again, if it was me, like I almost would have done the movie, told it through the lens of the 40-year war, and not done a whole lot of flashbacks. But like I probably still would have started the movie the same way. But I think I would have just shot straight to the 40-day war with Anya Taylor-Joy, seeing her fight not side by side with Praetor and Jack for Morton Joe. And then we find out that she's trying to find him through this 40-day war. Like she's trying to find Dementus while killing all these bikers through this 40-day war conflict. And then eventually she ends up finding him towards the end. And then we kind of fill in the pieces of her story as we get there. And like we see the war rig and everything. And again, it's not like a huge thing that I think like brings down the story necessarily. I just like once they brought that up, I was like, oh, I think that's something I would have wanted to see. And I
You
feel
just want to see,
like
you love to see action. You
I
just want
do.
to always see action.
I do. I do. Um, yeah, I'm an action guy. That's why I love
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road. Like, but I think like the narrative still could have been um told. I think you still could have got the story, but like by setting it in the what's the best way to put it? It's almost like you don't really have to set up the action if it's in like a 40-day war scenario. Like if it's in the war scene, you can like have an action scene with a lot of war and then go to like a flashback or a calm down scene and then immediately get back into the action of the war. You know what I mean? You don't have to like build it up every time, if that makes sense. Like when they were going to take over Gastown, he kind of had to
Hmm.
build up the action and like put all the stuff on him. But like when you're in a war, it's like the next scene, if it's a battle, like it just makes sense. We don't really have to see how the battle starts. I think that's what I mean. Like you don't have to see how do we get to this point where they're fighting. We already know it's in a war. So you just show us battle after battle to kind of keep the action going.
Sure.
But I do think it made sense how Mortis and Dementis were. I didn't even think he was going to have a Morton Joe in this movie, which is why I was really surprised to see him in the trailers, because I thought Dementis was going to be like a Morton Joe's predecessor or something. Um, and I feel like having a Morton Joe was helpful. I don't think I really got how, because like obviously Furiosa doesn't like a Morton Joe, um, because he's
Hmm.
a terrible person. Like we all understand that, and that's why she viciously killed him in Fury War Road. Um, but it feels more like remember at the end of Fury Road where she was like, "Remember me," and then she like rips off his face and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Based upon Furiosa, like I remember seeing that and like it didn't really like it was just awesome because we all wanted to see him die and she killed him in a really cool way, but we didn't really think about like what did she mean by remember me. And to me Furiosa like kind of was like the way to explain that because like that sounds like a very personal line. Like she's not just killing someone who's a terrible person of these five girls, she's killing someone that she personally feels victimized by.
Hmm.
And she kind of was by a Morton Joe because of the way that he like ruled everything. Like everybody who lived there was victimized, but it didn't really feel quite as personal, if that makes sense. Like I was kind of expecting like maybe she spent time as one of his wives and was able to escape and realized she needed to get those other wives out of there. Something like that. But that's not really how it ended up going. Um, and so like I said, I don't know if his appearance didn't it definitely didn't bring down the movie having him in there. I don't think it made it worse in any way. And I think it did make it better. I just don't think it made it as good as I thought it was going to be.
Because you were wanting a more personal interaction between him and Furiosa.
Yeah, something a little bit. It just kind of feels like he's another warlord that she ends up, and then she kind of ends up using him to get her goal, which again makes perfect sense. And again, he's obviously not a good guy, so like his death was very justified in Mad Max. But the line that she said, like I said, that personal like "remember me," and then like ripped
Hmm.
off his face, like obviously that makes a lot of sense for Dementis because he didn't see her after she left, and he killed her mom. So she's obviously very, very upset by that and is very, very personal. It doesn't feel as personal with her and Immortan Joe.
Hmm.
But like I said, maybe she took on the pain that those girls, his wives had and was like saying, remember me. I mean, do you interpret that line to mean anything deeper or like it just didn't end up or
Well, well, I'd say a couple of things. First, I want to make a comment back to the 40 war
oh
point
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that you were talking about. I think that would absolutely make sense if the focus was an action driven narrative. But I
Mm-hmm.
truly do not think that's what this movie is. Like at its core, fundamentally, it is, and it feels like we've been talking a lot about these kinds of films recently. It is a revenge story. It is Furiosa trying to kill Dementus
Mm-hmm.
and get to him. And focusing on the war would take away from her her hunt of Dementus because she wasn't even there in the war. She was back in the Citadel the entire time, healing
Mm-hmm.
from her arm being ripped
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
In a
So do
and well, the arm ripping off wasn't brutal, but just like the implication of it is
yeah.
so like hardcore. Um,
Do you
but
think that would have taken away from the hunt? Like, sorry to interrupt, but like, do you think it would have taken away even if she was, like, if we saw her like using the war to get to him, like killing all these bikers and being like, "Where's Dementis? Where's
yes,
Dementis? Where's Dement?" You still okay?
yes, because I think everything in the movie always comes back one way or the other to Furiosa getting to Dementus.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we don't get as much about the Immortan Joe part because we only see Immortan Joe as much as it is relevant to that journey. We see him at the beginning because Dementus comes in with his biker gang out in the front and challenges Immortan Joe for his throne, gets sent back, and then comes up with a ruse in which Immortan Joe then tries to take possession of Furiosa. And we only see him within the context of that revenge plot because we don't have scenes that flash back to just Immortan Joe and plotting because he's not relevant to the story being told. The 40-Day War by proxy is not relevant to the story that's being told here. It's not relevant to her revenge. She wants to kill Dementus. She couldn't care less about how Immortan Joe makes out in this war or how the rest of his biker gang is. She just wants that man dead whatsoever and to get back home if she can with the people she cares about, like with Praetorian Jack, a person that she had come to respect and deeply care for.
Hmm.
Um, he doesn't make it in a very sad way, a very sad scene. He doesn't make it, so she treks out for her revenge at the
Hmm.
hands of the man who caused it. So I think any focus away, and that's something that I've been thinking more about since I've seen it, is how tight the movie feels in that sense. Because, like, looking back, it doesn't feel like we have much fat in that way. All of the beginning, even before we get to the Anya Taylor-Joy portion, when it's Alila Brown portraying Furiosa. It is very focused in just showing us how horrible Dementus is, as well as establishing the how do we get here? Because I do think by it being a prequel, there is some groundwork that has to be laid as to how certain characters get to certain points beforehand. But I think he does a good way at doing that while also making it still service the revenge.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And yeah, I kind of agree. See how that would have played out. I think just impartially, I think it's like the summer blockbuster talking, like
Yeah, you just what you want like action fest.
like this is
Yeah.
this is what May is for. That's what we get in May.
And I
And
think
like,
and I think that's totally valid because this almost in some ways doesn't feel like a follow-up to Fury Road because it's not like I don't think the draw for this movie is the same draw for Fury Road.
mhm,
As much as I love it, like an action-led movie, I don't think this is. The action is incredible, but at the end of the day, when I think back on it, I will go back to watch it for the action. But if I had to pick between the two and I just want to watch just pure action, I'm gonna pick Fury Road. I'm gonna go to this movie for how it weaves that in with a compelling revenge narrative. And I think it's the combination of those two, like that braid of these two threads being weaved together is what makes Furiosa feel unique and have its own identity for being a prequel, but also different.
mhm. And I agree. And so do you think that that line, "Remember me," is kind of like, what do you think it means in Fury Road after watching Furiosa and realizing she doesn't really have that much of a personal connection to a Morton Joe? Does it just kind of like just like not really matter, or like how do you react to it? Like,
I don't see it as necessarily something directly hurtful that a Morton Joe did directly to Furiosa in a physical sense. I think it's just the fact that she's been forced by the circumstance to be under his control, being sold up. Because I mean, we may not have had a scene where she was attacked by a Morton Joe or something, but he literally used her as property and like took her in as property, and he uses women as property in
mhm.
this film. I don't think like to me that is reason enough for her, like that's justification for whatever feeling she comes away with of remember me
Yeah,
because of
obviously, yeah.
like I don't think anything. And if anything, I think I'm glad that they didn't go down the route for having Furiosa essayed at any point. There was a brief period where I was afraid they were going to go that route with that scene with Rictus, where he's like playing with her hair and then he
Oh
goes
yeah,
in.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was very worried they were going to go that because I hate that
Hmm.
trope of requiring women go through that to then be strong heroines. It's way overused and horribly misrepresentative of any
Yeah,
either side of it. And I'm glad they didn't because that would have, I think, taken away from
yeah.
Anya Furiosa's character here.
And I think when we got to that scene, like with Rictus, even like what I was expecting when she became one of the wives, because at first he was like, "You'll grow up here and then you'll become a wife." I thought that I didn't think we I thought she was gonna escape that before Rictus I mean, before or more and Joe tries to like basically get her pregnant. Like I thought, because based upon the way we saw Mad Max Saga, I mean the way that Fury Road was done, I would
Mhm.
have thought that like she would have grown up there with the wives, and I thought that was going to kind of be her personal connection. But I guess it does kind of make more sense that she grew up more working on the rigs and stuff because that's how she got
Mhm.
so good with them. And like
Mhm.
maybe I thought she was going to escape. Like I would have thought that she grew up to be Anya Taylor-Joy and then maybe escaped and like worked on the rigs for like 10 years or so until she got to the point where she was fighting in the 40-year war or working on the rig or something like that. But either way, I know what you mean. It was kind of nerve-wracking when we got to that scene with Rictus, but at the same time I was like, I mean, it's George Miller though. I was like, I don't really
Mhm.
think I like something's gonna happen, but I don't think it's gonna be like the trope of because again, that's just kind of what like I feel like George Miller, like in any other movie, I would have been nervous, but I feel like with George Miller, based upon what I saw in Fury Road, I was like, I don't think he's gonna show. I think she's gonna end up. And by the time I was having the thought, she escaped. So it was
Yeah,
like,
she
yeah, I was
had,
like
yeah,
scene
she,
over.
because that's very close to like before we get to Anya Taylor-Joy,
Yeah.
because then she starts working on the, I don't know if they're ever given a name, but like the people that walk on the big hamster, like the inverted hamster wheel where the people are like climbing like eternally. She worked as one of those for a bit, and
Oh
then
yeah, I
she
guess
got promoted to, was it was it like working the the crank? I
I
forget exactly.
guess because he just
She
pushed the
got
other
the
guy
she got the
off.
gloves. Yeah, she got the
Yeah,
dude's gloves, but
yeah, yeah. So she kind of just worked her way up into that role.
no, I think her whole like childhood and being raised in that environment into adulthood to me is reason enough for the remember me. Because also at by that point, she is a prominent figure in Immortan Joe's like like I'm trying to think of the right word, but like the function of
Hmm.
his system like requires having her a very trusted and very prominent figure in like the economy of his like civilization because she is the one that's trusted to run the tanker for supplies. Without her, no one else gets anything. So it's
Hmm.
like she does play a very prominent figure. So yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and I think that that really makes sense for the storyline. But of course, like we talked about, how like, I'm a very big action guy, and
Mhm.
the movie has a lot of action. Don't get me wrong, I would still classify it as an action movie, but I think based upon Mad Max and the trailers, it's not quite as much action that I think a lot of people were expecting.
Mhm.
It wasn't as much as I was expecting. Oh my God, there is a
Def
guy just walking on the railroad tracks right now, and I really hope he's okay. I'm sorry, that was very random, but like out my window, I'm in the city and I can see the railroad tracks, and I'm
uh-huh.
like, do I need to call? Okay, he's getting off.
He's getting off.
I think so. Okay. Sorry, guys. Ooh, perks of living in the city. Okay. Okay, he got off.
Okay.
He'll be okay,
If you
I
can, if you
think.
can, if you're listening to this railroad man, we hope you're safe and
Hope you're okay. Please get off
hope
the
you're okay.
railroad. There's sidewalks. Don't get hit by a train because they will not stop and will not be able to see you. Anyway, what was I talking about? The box
Um,
office.
box office. You were getting to that, yes.
Yeah. So even though Fury Road, it kind of um like you said, this movie doesn't really seem like it has as much action as like if you're basing it off of the trailers and you're basing it off of the movie that came before it, you're not going to get as much action as expected. And I'm wondering if that's kind of affecting the box office performance because for Memorial Day weekend, which is usually one of the biggest weekends for movies, that's kind of the coveted weekend. That's the weekend that Marvel has dominated for the past 14 years. Usually they do it at the beginning of May. Sometimes they do it Memorial Day weekend. It just kind of depends. But usually the Marvel movie that's in theaters is dominating through Memorial Day weekend. And I'm wonder and so far May 2024 itself has pretty much been 2024 and 2023 have been some of the worst movies as far as box office returns. I won't say
Hmm.
performance because I think there probably have been worse movies with performance, but with inflation, with budgets going up, and with how that kind of all tracks out, I think it's two of the worst years we've ever had, worse than 2022. Um, and 2020 you can't really count because of the pandemic, and 2021 everyone was so excited to be back in theaters, but like Fury Road right now, it's barely at 70 million and it barely beat out Garfield for the number one spot at the box office this weekend, which is not good. Like, I think the projections were it was supposed to hit. I don't know what it was projected to hit. Let me see what um the opening day, I think it was projected to hit what it took the entire weekend to hit. Because it opened to 32 million. And at the end of the weekend, right now, it's setting at 70 million. And this is the lowest box office takings on Memorial Day weekend since 1995. 1995. And I feel like at this point in the film industry, in the movie industry, like critics and like we can't just say it's a fluke. It's a just a happenstance. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
there's a reason for it. So what do you think it is?
I I can't in it definitely is not the movie. I really do not believe it is anything to do with Furiosa. I mean, the general audience reception has been very good. The critical
Mhm.
reception has been very good. By those kind of like corporate metrics, the movie should be doing much better than it is. I think it has more to do with a symptom of people's movie going habits. I mean, when it is like $20 for a single person to go see a
Mhm.
single movie, like you can't expect the crazy kind of numbers that you would see otherwise. And it makes things like Oppenheimer or Barbie or
Barbenheimer.
Dune, Barbenheimer, of course. It makes it more. You have to look at like other areas. So I honestly don't know.
For
I think it.
context, for context, Garfield got largely negative reviews from films from critics all over. Guess how
Mhm.
much its box office has taken in?
80.
100 million.
Oh my God.
Its budget
But
was 60 million.
let me ask you this. What other movies for Memorial Day weekend were kid friendly?
Yeah,
If like if
exactly.
like if the logic is just like if that's like the movie going weekend and you got a family, like what other option do you have?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like who's gonna bring their 6-year-old to Furiosa?
Yeah,
Please,
no.
please do not bring your 6-year-old to this movie.
And I also think like the rise of streaming content and all of that has really kind of affected it because like I don't know if I was a parent and like Garfield and Furiosa were coming out, I'd probably be like, okay, I'm gonna go take my wife to go see Furiosa because it's only two of us, and we'll just wait till Garfield comes out on DVD and then we'll just go see it then. But clearly
Hmm.
that's not the way that it comes out on streaming at some point, and we'll just go see it then. but it's not really the way that people are thinking. And I think, I mean, and again, I don't have like kids pestering me to like go to the movie theater, so I don't really know what that's like. I remember pestering my dad to take me to the theater back when I was a kid, but I don't know what it's like to be on the other side. So I think it's just the rise of streaming as well, because
Mhm.
even Dune Part 2 is already on HBO Max.
The Fall Guy that came out weeks ago
It's
is
mhm.
already available for purchase to stream.
Right. And I don't think, and for some people, like you can rent the movie and watch it from home for like $4. I'm not going to rent The Fall Guy. I'm just going to wait till it comes out on some other streaming platform that I'm already paying $10 a month to have. But I think with the industry right now, like executives, especially with the way Netflix blew up, and I think everyone that's trying to chase Netflix's success is completely is what's kind of ruining almost the movie landscape itself, because
Mhm.
everybody now wants to have their own streaming service so they can have people paying for that. But the problem is people aren't going to pay for 10, 15 streaming services and then also go buy a movie ticket, because
Mhm.
now you're kind of approaching like you it's like, and like a bunch of, I heard like a bunch of streaming services were coming together to like make a package, and someone was like online, he's like, all the streaming services are going to come together and be offered by a company, and we're going to have cable again.
Yep.
Because at one point, people did pay for cable and they would go
Yeah.
to the movie.
Streaming was the answer to cable.
Right, right. Streaming was supposed to compete with cable, but I think right now it's ended up competing with the box office, because especially with, being able to watch whatever you want on demand, it changes a lot. And I think with Dune and Barbenheimer, like I think in order to get someone to come see your movie in theater, you kind of have to make them feel like it's not going to be the same if you watch it at home. And that's what they did with Oppenheimer, Barbie, and Dune Part 2. But other than that, no other movie has really done well at the box office in the past 2 years. The one that comes closest is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And a lot of that's because it has a lot of fans from Guardians 1 and 2, all before the pandemic.
Hmm.
So I think the pandemic has definitely shifted people's movie going habits. I think Disney has yet to pull a profit on Disney Plus, like with all the content that they've been putting out onto it. They still haven't pulled a profit, and I think that's partially why Quantumania did so poorly. I think that's partially why um, the Marvels did so poorly, because people were like, "Well, I could pay $10 a month, and I'm just gonna go see it when it comes out on streaming, and I don't really need to go to the theater to go see it." You know what I mean? Like, and also back when like the Marvel Cinematic Universe was like really, really at its peak, to see a movie in theaters on TV back when cable was a thing, it would take years, like years. Like I remember being so excited when I got to watch the Avengers on like TNT. And it was like 2015, and it was like the first time they were showing it. So it's like if you
Hmm.
didn't see Avengers in theaters, you weren't going to see it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's kind of an effect on it too. I think Furiosa is going to be out on HBO Max probably before the summer's over, I would say, before Dune Prophecy comes out. And I might like, I'm probably gonna cancel my Max right now because I don't use it, and I'm just gonna sign up when Dune Prophecy and Furiosa comes on it, just for that month, so I can
Just
watch
for
the
that
stuff I want to
moment.
watch. Because that's the way that it's headed. So, it's very,
I
like I said, I think Furiosa is still a good movie. I think it's still a great movie to see in theaters. Um, but also, like, it's true, like when you're watching a movie in theaters, you do kind of want to see a lot of bang 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 action. And I think it has a chance to rebound, but the fact that Garfield is beating it by $30 million right now is not good.
see, but I I think I did. There's so much action in this movie, especially from what trailers I have seen of this movie. That's
Mhm.
all that they are showing.
Yeah.
All they are showing is that action. So, like everything on paper should be making this a success in
Mhm.
that way. Like this is worthy of a action blockbuster. I don't know how much around it is supporting it, how many other blockbuster type movies we have as an option. But
Well, again, the crazy thing is like when you think about Dune Part 2, which has been I would dare to say the only successful movie that's come out in theaters this year. Successful, turned in a nice profit margin. Because even 700 million is kind of like when your budget's 200 million, 700 million is kind of the benchmark that you have to hit almost.
which can I just take a second to say how stupid that is that you have to
It's
make
crazy.
700 million just for it to be considered successful?
Yeah,
That is ridiculous. Movies cost too much. Movies cost too
too
much
much
money.
to make. Yeah. I
Too
mean,
much money.
when they made Mad Max Fury Road, it grossed 380 million. And that was respectable, but that wasn't a hit. The movie only got greenlit for a sequel because of all the critical acclaim. And people were like, oh my God, we loved it. But it didn't do that well in theaters because, again, it made back like, studios want to like triple their budgets. And when you've got your CEO making like $5 million, you can't have your movie just barely making its budget back.
Of course not.
Yeah, not with those salaries. So because
Cap-
like Dune Part 2,
Capitalism is a cancer, man. It's gonna kill us all.
I agree that Furiosa is like I would say Furiosa has more action than Dune Part 2.
100%.
But which one did we go see? Like, would you go see Furiosa in theaters again?
Yes.
You would?
If
Are you going
if I
to?
had if I had like the ability, like if you're talking just like a choice, like I would absolutely go see it if like financially I could afford to continually go and see this movie.
Okay.
Absolutely I would because I
Right.
loved it. It was
Right.
great. It was everything I enjoyed from Fury Road condensed onto a smaller scale with more personal stakes. And I love that.
But are you gonna go see it again?
Probably not.
Yeah, and I mean that's just the state of but like with Dune Part 2,
But that's not the movie. That's like my
no, no, no.
like
I don't think that's the movie either. I think it's just the way it was marketed. Like again, after I saw Dune Part 2, I was like, there is no way I'm not gonna go see this again in theaters. Even if I end up selling my kidney, I'm gonna end up seeing it. And again, like that level, like you shouldn't have to have like that level of critical acclaim for your movie to even be a success. Like Furiosa deserves to be a success in theaters. My point is just the way that the marketing's going. Like if you don't make audiences feel like they're gonna miss out on something incredible unless they go see this movie in theaters, it just kind of ends up flopping.
but then I mean Furiosa is I'm checking it right now on Rotten Tomatoes. It is at a 90
Right.
for
It's
both
great.
critical and audience scores. Like no, not every movie can be the like transcendent movie of the decade kind
Right.
of
But it
movie.
feels like
And for
that's
that
what
to
you
be the
need.
stakes is,
Hmm.
but like at that point, that's not any film's fault. That's not
No,
Garfield's fault. That's not Furiosa's fault. That's the industry, and that's probably have to do with a lot of the CEOs who are trying to push for the profit portion.
I think a lot of it is streaming too, because again, with the Barbenheimer phenomenon, people felt like this is a transcendent experience that I'm gonna miss out on if I don't see it in theaters. There's no way to get this back. With Dune Part 2, same thing. Those like you like if you didn't see it in IMAX, you felt like you were missing out. You know what I mean? Like, but unless you create and are able, and it's like, how do you create that kind of marketing hype? I don't really know. And there are some movies that still have done well, like Anyone But You came out in the at the end of last year, and it grossed a very healthy 150 million on like I think it was mainly because of word of mouth. Like the opening weekend was kind of shaky, but people really liked it and they went back to see it. However, the difference is Anyone But You cost like $10 million. The budget, if Anyone But You had Furiosa's budget, it still wouldn't have even made it back. Like it was considered a success because it made 150 million. Furiosa's budget is 165 million.
Mhm.
So it's like when you have these blockbusters, it's just like you said, I think the issue right now why people aren't going to theaters is streaming. It's a lot more comfortable in your home. Like I had a neighbor next door who used to have like a literal movie theater room where we used to watch football games. And I'm like, if I still lived next door to him and I was able to go over the way that I could all the time, I'm like, and we had access to streaming, I don't know what movie. But I mean, I still love going to the theaters because I just love the experience, and I feel like you can't get that sound, anywhere else. But for a
Hmm.
lot of people, it's just kind of like, why when I can just watch it at home? So, oh, sorry. Um, I think it's very interesting. I think it's very sad because I think movie theater going is a very big part of the industry. I
Hmm.
think being in a theater is it's a huge part of movie theater culture. Like, moments that I've got from seeing Spider-Man No Way Home in theater, uh, Infinity War, Endgame in theater. Like those are moments that I'm never gonna forget, and I feel like you kind of need that. But like, and especially with like big franchises and stuff, like look at how many big franchises flopped last year too. Like Transformers didn't do so well. Mission
Hmm.
Impossible, it did all right, but it didn't do what it was expected to do.
Hmm.
Fast and Furious 10, which I don't even know how they got to 10. Don't know how they got to 10 movies about whatever
Oh,
they make in the
come
movie.
on, those are just schlocky action.
I know. I
That
know. And
feels
I've
like it
seen them
should be
all.
all it
Like
should feel like it should be all over for you, man. Like that should be like your bread and butter.
I guess there's only so much schlocky action without plot I could really justify. But that movie made like 700 million.
Hmm.
However, its budget was $365 million, which means at
Hmm.
700 million it just broke even.
I think
They
it's
were counting on like $1 billion. Like I feel like almost like especially after Marvel got like I think like 6 or 7 almost $1 billion movies in a row. Was it that many? Because Black Panther was 1 billion, Captain Marvel was 1 billion, Infinity War was 1 billion, Ant-Man and the Wasp wasn't. And then Endgame, well, Infinity War was 2 billion and Endgame was like 2 billion. So like
mhm,
in 2 years, Marvel literally made like $6 billion off of like 4 movies. And I
mhm.
think after then, it kind of changed the scope to like almost like $1 billion is kind of like I think executives think like, oh yeah, we'll hit $1 billion, and it's like, will you? Because that's very very different. So,
I think because when you look back to like our childhood, there were a lot more like there was more room for success for smaller scale like B movies, like things that were just kind of schlocky, but that you could just go to a movie theater and see. And there are way smarter people who have done way better analyses of this online that you can go and check out. But to just echo their voice slowly the industry has cut away the ability for us to have that room for like like okay movies and slowly it just keeps creeping up and up to where now it feels like we can't even have really good or great movies because the room for how success is measured is just so astronomically high that it feels like the only room for barely successful in movies is to have like once in a generation kind of films. The things that are going to be Oscar worthy, I
mhm,
use big air quotes for that, but things like an Oppenheimer are what it takes for it to be successful. And that's just sad because we're going to lose out on so many unique films in the process. Things are going to be homogenized so much to be as successful as possible. I mean, I've read a couple of articles already that Furiosa's poor performance could lead to the planned Mad Max The Wasteland movie that George Miller was working on to be canned because I've
mhm,
seen multiple interviews or multiple articles where he says that it kind of depends on the success of Furiosa. And it has nothing to do with his ability or his team's ability or the actors' ability on set. It's none of their fault because they made a killer movie, but because it didn't hit this absurdly high threshold for success that the industry has deemed as necessary, we're going to lose out on a continuation of this crazy, unique, and to me, a breath of fresh air for the landscape that it occupies in the film industry. We could lose that out entirely.
It used to be that, talking about a movie made you go viral, right? But now it's like a movie almost needs to go viral for it to be successful. Like if
Hmm.
people aren't talking about it before it comes out, people won't end up seeing it. Now, like, and again, the standard used to be that like back when Marvel movies were coming out in 2017, 2018, and I know I keep referencing those, but like every video on YouTube, they were all about theories, all about breakdowns. People were talking about the movie because they wanted to be on the hype train because everyone was taught they wanted to be on it, and it felt like the movie was the thing that was making them popular, right? Because they had like a good breakdown of Avengers, people started following them because the movie talking about it is what made them popular. And I
Hmm.
feel like, especially in 2023, it's completely shifted because, like, again, if you didn't have people saying, like, wow, I just realized Oppenheimer is like this gritty R-rated thriller about a bomb going about, the atomic bomb. And then you have Barbie, which is like this happy, bright movie about Barbie. And it's like, I think I want to see those back to back. And then suddenly
Hmm.
that just becomes viral. And like the executives are like, works for us. I guess that's fine. And people just end up wanting to go see it because the talk around it went viral. Like it wasn't anything about the movie itself. I mean, those are both good movies, don't get me wrong, but like people got excited for them before they were out in theaters
Hmm.
because the narrative around them was going viral rather than like like it's so hard to explain, but it's like it's almost like instead of like movies need social media now in order to be
Right,
successful.
that was lightning in a bottle. Like that wasn't
Hmm.
because like some genius marketers came out.
Came
It's
up with that,
because
yeah.
a collective group of people just independently thought it was funny that this super
Yeah.
serious World War II dramatic Christopher Nolan movie came out the same day as Barbie. It was a meme, and companies thought they could capitalize it, and they thought that that should be the standard.
Yep. And like I said, to me, like it kind of worked with Dune Part 2 because there's a lot of people talking about it. But there's also a lot of actors in it, you know. And I think that kind of helps too. I just I'm like when we go through because again, as streaming prices continue to climb, like I had to switch to Netflix with ads because when I first got Netflix, it was like $8, and suddenly I look up and it's like charging me $20, and I'm like I had to go down to Netflix with ads and still pay
Mhm.
for it.
And
And it's
we can't
like,
share it anymore because they locked
right.
out on the ability to share accounts.
And I'm like, really, Netflix? Like, you guys are losing money right now? Really? Really? But
Very
whatever.
anti-consumer.
I know. Um, and I just hope I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if like to me it's like it can't keep going like this because like if the ticket prices start rising to account for the failing box office returns, again, people are going to stop going. And if the streaming prices start to go up because people aren't tuning in as much or they're not making enough money, because I don't think there's a single streaming service out there that's making a profit except for Netflix, because Netflix started it and everybody else is trying to catch up and fill their catalogs with content for people, but Netflix is the only one. And like we like when they stopped the sharing, I was like, no, we're not doing Netflix for a whole year. And my wife was like, we're not doing that anymore. We need Netflix back. And now we have it back because basically because she said so.
Hmm.
But again, like if those keep climbing, it's just going to lead to some kind of huge crash because people aren't going to keep spending money on something that gets more expensive. Either you'll
Right.
be a theater person or you'll just be a one streaming service kind of person. Like you're not going to keep paying for all of these. And I just hope, like again, the typical like I don't want to say capitalist response, but the capitalist response to see like the way the shift is going is like, oh, well, we just got to raise prices so we can bring in more money. But that's
Hmm.
not going to help because the raised prices are why you're not bringing in more money. because
Hmm.
again, box office movie tickets, you know, like I remember when I could go see a movie for like it was pretty much $10 and you know, you would go for like the $5 Tuesdays, which I still do. Um, but you know, movie ticket was pretty much like $10. And now it's like, especially if you're going at a busy time, like on a weekend night, like I'm almost afraid to have a bunch of people like come out to a weekend or invite a family because your ticket's going to be $18
Hmm.
to go see a movie. If you got a
Right.
family of four, that is literally dinner at a fancy restaurant. Like,
And where before, like it felt like I could afford to say, yeah, I want to go see Furiosa, but then like I'm also gonna go see like Garfield with my parents or
yeah,
whatever. It's like I could, it could make more financial sense to where like, yeah, we can go everywhere. And part of that is like movie tickets raising, so where we have to be way more selective. Like there has been a ton of movies that have been coming out recently that I've
oh yeah,
been really wanting to see that I just have because of my own personal like budgeting reasons, I haven't been able to like say, hey, that's a fiscally responsible thing for me to do because I have to be more selective. So I have to wait out for the big things, the things that I have absolutely have to see. Because
hmm
there's no way I was not going to see Furiosa. There was just
yeah.
absolutely no way I wasn't going to see this because I loved Fury Road so much.
You know,
And for that to inhibit it, like yeah, absolutely, it's what's going to keep me from seeing this multiple times at the theater. It's what's going
yeah,
to keep me from seeing other movies. So
yeah. It's a sad state of affairs. I mean, at least now you can write off all those movies as like tax write-offs because you
yes,
know we have
it
to
was a
talk
business
about them.
expense.
Yeah, it's a business expense at this point.
Mhm.
But like again, like and I like seeing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. If I wasn't gonna cover it on the podcast, would I have still gone see it in theaters? I don't
I don't think I would have.
know. I don't know. Yeah, I wanted to see in like Godzilla versus Kong. Godzilla and Kong. That was one I really wanted to see in theaters because I thought it was
Mhm.
gonna be like you know, crazy action, but it's like they didn't have the budget to give me like a theater. Like it almost feels like the movies that you need to see in theaters almost need to be a little bit different than the ones that we get on streaming. Because for me to want to go watch it in theaters, I need it to be, you know, like intense action almost the entire way through. And I think it's also sad because like we've also gotten I don't know if like I don't think the quality of the film industry is necessarily like gone down a whole lot, but I think in the middle of all this inflation, we've had a lot of bad movies come out. A lot of really bad blockbusters that have kind of made people like kind of shy away. Like I feel like movies like Thor Love and Thunder, like that was one of the most disappointing movie theater experiences I've ever had. And that
That
was one of the
sucked so much.
so much. It made me want to be like, where's my money back? I want a refund. And I
Hmm.
see for a lot of people, it's probably like for some people, that movie could have turned them off to the whole Disney franchise and just been like, you know what? I have Disney Plus already because I have Verizon. I'm just gonna wait for it to come out. And that way, if it's stupid, I can just turn it off instead of sitting in this theater and having to watch the whole stupid thing because it was so stupid. And I think that's part of it too. Like, you know, the like people aren't just gonna because again, like 10 years ago, if you couldn't stream it, I mean, yeah, I've been to theaters and I've seen bad movies, and you didn't come out feeling as like this was such a waste of time and money when you weren't paying for streaming. Now, again, 10 years ago, I wasn't really had like bills or anything, so maybe that's different too. Like my parents were the ones like with all the bills, so maybe that's a different. But I think that's kind of affected it too. Like I can't really think of another movie in 2022 that was like a huge disappointment. But like with Quantumania, a lot of people were disappointed. My brother actually liked that movie, but a lot of people were disappointed with it, and I think that definitely didn't help. And I
Hmm.
think just you're
Because it was
gonna
an awful
see,
movie.
yeah. And I think
I
you're
hated
just
it
hated.
very, very much so.
Yeah, I just such a big missed opportunity to that's what it just feels like to me. Um and but again, and like you and I saw like Spider-Man No Way Home together, and that was a fantastic experience, right? Like I
Mhm.
loved it. And people were saying like that movie was built for theaters because like you could tell like even when Andrew Garfield came in and he was like like breathing weirdly. Like when there's
Hmm.
no one clapping in the theaters, like okay, it looks a little weird. But the
Yeah.
whole point was so that way you could have the people and like that was a theater experience movie. But like
Ooh. Hmm.
Black Widow was a huge like I hated that one. And it like I said, when you get all these duds in between, it makes people just not want to go see movies. I mean, like Transformers Rise of the Beast, I still enjoyed seeing it in theaters. It wasn't a good movie, but a lot of stuff blew up, a lot of things got shot, and that's what you want in your movie. But like, and look at all the DC movies that flopped, you know?
Hmm.
I'm surprised that, and like I think the saddest part about all of this that we're looking at is that we know the people that are going to feel the effects are not the executives in the ivory towers making the profits. Like it's either
Hmm.
going to hurt the actors, it's going to hurt the writers, the cameramen, the people, even the fans, the consumers. Like somehow, whatever happens in the industry, I feel like they're not going to be the ones to take the hit. They're not going to be like, well, since everything's like kind of changing with inflation, maybe I should cut myself from, you know, $30 million a year and just bring in 25. Like that's
Hmm.
not gonna happen. That's not how they think.
Nope.
So
No,
yeah,
because
it's just a sad
their
state.
profit is set in stone from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's everyone else's problem to make it that point.
Yeah. And it's like, well, just go make movies yourself, man. Like that's gonna be their reaction to it. So um kind of sad. It's kind of like a this is like the saddest we've ended an episode because I'm like
To
lamenting.
to
I
bring
think
it back just for a moment,
yeah,
Furiosa is definitely worth your time to see
yeah.
as a rapid fire. Chris Hemsworth is so great as Dementus. I
Mm-hmm.
think it showed a lot more range than I was expecting from this role. I think him being Thor has really kind of locked him into a bubble that I forget sometimes that he's like an actor, and
Yeah.
it felt like he was acting a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing crazy, but he really fit into the role, and it felt like he was having a blast.
Yeah, it really
Uh,
did. It
Anya
really did.
Taylor-Joy, all the actors were firing on all cylinders. It really felt like everyone was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think I was disappointed by at times was it wasn't as practical as Fury Road was. There were moments where you could really see, of course, there was CGI in Fury Road, but
Mm-hmm.
the moments of CGI in this movie felt way more jarring than they had in Fury Road. Whereas it felt like with Fury Road, the CGI just helped amplify the practical effects that were being shown. In Furiosa, it feels like the CGI was just kind of bad CGI at times.
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough to completely distract from the movie. I think the action scenes still hit really hard, and there's plenty of practical vehicular combat carnage to enjoy,
If you're like me.
but it just does not quite stack up.
Mhm.
But I think that George Miller proves that his style works on a smaller scale. Like the secret sauce to Fury Road was not just the fact that it was this giant caravan of cars. That was great for that movie, but I think his skill still worked here when it was smaller.
Yeah. And I mean, like again, I completely understand like inflation is absolutely insane right now and it's so hard to go see movies. Um but if anything is worth your time and money, I would say Furiosa. You know, AMC theaters. I think every theater pretty much has a $6 night. Regal, AMC, Epic. Sign up for Movie Pass or something. I used my Movie Pass to get a $6 ticket and a bag of Reese's. It is great. It only cost me $10 a month. So yeah, because I mean, like I said, I love the theater. I hope the industry doesn't die, but we've seen more losses in recent years than I can ever imagine. And I think Furiosa does not deserve to be one of those movies on the ash heap. Like there's a lot of movies last year that deserve to be box office bombs. Flash kind of deserved to be one, you know, Shazam kind of deserved to be one. I don't know if Godzilla and Kong ended up being a box office bomb, but it pretty much deserved it. Furiosa is not one of them. So
This is not a cash grab. This is a movie made with
yes.
love and care, and it is worth your time and energy if you can go see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a perfect way to send it off. And so next week we're gonna go back to the 80s and we'll try to keep the hype for Furiosa going because we're gonna talk about Mad Max, the film that started it all. And like when I saw this movie, I didn't even know that like there was a whole franchise that came before Fury Road. So it got some very interesting thoughts. And you're already laughing about it. But I can tell because like it's gonna be a very interesting pod. So
It was a movie made at a different time and a different
yes.
style, and it's ripe for us to talk about.
Yes.
But
So
please let us know what you thought about
mhm,
Furiosa.
mhm.
Like, tell us if you didn't like it, tell us if you loved it. I want to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, guys. Until next time.